All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be back.
So today, we are diving into some Canadian politics.
Ooh.
And this is going to be interesting
Yes, it is.
because we are looking at how Canada is dealing with a new U.S. president.
Yeah. A new and potentially challenging U.S. president.
Yeah, exactly. President-elect Trump.
You said it.
So we've got this fascinating article from the Canadian press, and it's about all the stuff that happened behind the scenes while Trudeau was trying to figure out how to deal with all this.
Well, and this is really interesting because, a new U.S. president always presents challenges for Canada, but Trump is a whole other...
different ball game.
Yeah, you could say that.
So let's start by setting the scene here.
Okay.
Trump's about to take office. Everybody's a little bit nervous.
Understatement.
And Trudeau decides to hold this meeting with all the other party leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would think that's a good idea, right?
I mean, on the surface, it seems like a smart move trying to present a united front, show that Canada's all on the same page.
Right.
Kneeling with this new administration, but it kind of backfires a little.
It does. How so?
Well, you've got someone like conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
Oh, yeah.
And he basically uses this opportunity to just totally hammer Trudeau.
Really? What's his angle?
He's saying that Trudeau has made Canada look weak, basically, in the face of this new U.S. administration.
Okay, so is he saying that the meeting itself was a bad idea, or is it more about, Trudeau's approach to the meeting?
Well, I think it's more about the policies that Trudeau's been pushing.
Okay.
Things like the carbon tax.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Huge. And the article actually quotes Poilievre saying that, Trump is going to be on the phone calling up Canadian businesses, saying, hey, come on down south. We don't have a carbon tax down here.
Wow. Okay, so he's painting this picture of Canada becoming, less competitive, economically because of Trudeau's policies.
Exactly. And, this taps into this broader debate in Canada about how to balance environmental goals with economic growth.
Right, because you can't really ignore the climate stuff, but you also don't want to shoot yourself in the foot economically.
Totally. And that's what Poilievre's hitting on. He's saying that Trudeau is basically making Canada less attractive to businesses.
Especially compared to the U.S.
Especially compared to a U.S. that might be, cutting regulations and taxes under Trump.
Okay, so I'm hearing what Poilievre's saying, but, is it actually a valid criticism? I mean, was Trudeau being naive going into this meeting, or was he just trying to do damage control in a tough situation?
It's really hard to say, because on the one hand, I see Poilievre's point.
Yeah.
You can't just ignore the economic realities, and if businesses are really being pushed away by certain policies,
right,
that's a problem. But on the other hand, maybe Trudeau is playing a longer beam here.
Look, what do you mean?
Well, maybe he's thinking, okay, I need to build some kind of relationship with Trump, try to find some common ground, even if we disagree on some things, because if we just go in guns blazing, it could really backfire.
Okay, so it's a balancing act.
Total balancing act.
All right, so we've got the carbon tax, but what else is causing friction here?
Well, there's also the whole border security issue.
Oh, yeah.
Trump has made it very clear that he wants Canada and Mexico to step up their game.
In terms of
illegal immigration and drug trafficking.
Right. So that adds another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
Absolutely.
Because Canada and the U.S., they share this massive border.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cooperation that has to happen.
So much cooperation.
To keep things running smoothly.
Yeah, you can't just shut down the border. There's so much back and forth and trade and...
people crossing visa every day.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really delicate situation. And Trump's demands, they could throw a wrench into all of that.
Okay, so how did Trudeau handle this in the meeting? Did he try to push back on Trump's demands, or did he kind of just go along with it?
Well, according to the article, it seems like he was trying to kind of downplay the potential for conflict. He was asking the other party leaders to not publicly criticize Trump or, undermine Canada's position. And instead, he wanted them to focus on explaining how Trump's policies might actually hurt the U.S.
Like if there was a trade war or something?
Exactly. If Trump slaps tariffs on Canadian goods, it's going to hurt American consumers, too.
Right. It's not a one-way street.
Nope.
Okay, so essentially he's trying to make the case that cooperation is in everyone's best interest.
Exactly. And that a trade war would be bad for both sides.
But, how realistic is that approach? I mean, we're talking about Trump here, a guy who loves to fight.
I know, right? It's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Because this whole situation really highlights the challenge that Canada faces, being right next door to the U.S.
Yeah.
On the one hand, They need to maintain a good relationship with the U.S. It's their biggest trading partner.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, they also need to stand up for their own interests.
Right. Which sometimes conflict with what the U.S. wants.
Exactly. So it's this constant balancing act.
And it sounds like Trudeau's trying to walk that tightrope.
He is definitely trying.
So we've talked a lot about Poilievre and his criticism. But what about the other party leaders? What were their reactions to all of this?
Well, the article mentions that the Bloc Québécois leader,
Yves-François Blanchet.
yeah, he described the meeting with Trudeau as cordial and constructive.
Oh, wow. So not as combative as Poilievre.
Not even close. It seems like he's at least open to working with Trudeau, on some level.
Okay, so maybe there's some potential for a united front,
Maybe.
even if it doesn't include everyone.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, in the long run.
Yeah.
Because this whole thing with the incoming Trump administration, it really sets the stage for what could be a very rocky few years in Canada-U.S. relations.
Yeah. And speaking of Rocky, we can't end this deep dive without talking about that little anecdote about Trump joking about making Canada the 51st state.
Oh, gosh, yes. During their meeting at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. Like, was he actually serious or was he just messing around?
Who knows?
I mean, it's Trump. You never know.
It's Trump.
But either way, it definitely shows the power dynamic,
Yeah.
between the two countries.
Oh, absolutely. And the delicate balancing act that Trudeau has to manage.
Because on the one hand, you don't want to overreact to every little comment.
Right.
But on the other hand, you also don't want to be a pushover.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's tricky.
Very tricky. And it leaves us with a lot to think about.
It does.
Like, how should Canada navigate this new relationship with the U.S.?
Right.
I mean, should they prioritize cooperation even when it means compromising on some of their own interests, or...
Or should they be more assertive?
Yeah.
And risk damaging the relationship?
Yeah. It's a tough question with no easy answers.
Well, those are some big questions to ponder.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Canadian politics. It seems like things are just getting started with the new U.S. administration.
Yeah, buckle up.
So we will definitely be keeping a close eye on how it all unfolds. Until next time.